Commander Taeyong stared at the holographic displays on the bridge of the Coalition's last functional battleship. The blue territories that marked their space shrank as red areas of Vex control expanded. His shoulders felt heavy under the weight of command. The bridge crew worked quietly. Most hadn't slept in days. The air tasted stale, recycled too many times as life support systems struggled under battle damage. "Commander," Lieutenant Jimin's voice broke the silence. She looked up from her station, dark circles under her eyes. "We've lost the Alarian system. Our outer defenses are completely gone." Taeyong closed his eyes for a moment. Alarian, 3 habitable planets, billions of people, gone. How many civilians evacuated? He asked, already dreading the answer. Jimin looked down at her display. "Less than half, sir. The rest." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Taeyong nodded, another failure to add to his growing list. 6 months ago, the Coalition controlled 30 star systems. Now they were down to 7. The Vex Dominion's war machines seemed unstoppable. Admiral Hosiuk entered the bridge. The old military leader moved with purpose despite his age. His uniform, once crisp, now hung loose on his frame. In his hand, he carried a small glowing data crystal. "Commander," Hosiuk said, "I need to speak with you." They moved to the small strategy room off the main bridge. Taeyong sank into a chair as Hosiuk placed the crystal in the reader. "The archivists found something in the ancient records," Hosiuk said as data filled the air around them. "A species called humans from a distant sector of the galaxy." Taeyong watched as images appeared, strange ships unlike any he'd seen before. "Another myth to chase while we die?" he asked bitterly. "I thought so too," Hosiuk replied. "But look at this." The display changed to show battle footage, ships that moved in ways that defied physics, weapons that cut through defenses like they weren't there. "Their military capabilities are extraordinary," Hosiuk said quietly, "and the records are precise. Coordinates, communication protocols, everything we need." Taeyong studied the information. "Why haven't we heard of them before?" "The records say they isolated themselves after some great conflict thousands of years ago. They withdrew to a region near the galactic rim. If they're real, why would they help us?" Taeyong asked. Hosiuk smiled faintly. "The records say humans have one unusual trait. They cannot ignore a call for help." An emergency council meeting was called. Leaders from the 7 remaining systems gathered virtually, their tired faces filling the conference room displays. "We have nothing to lose," argued Counselor Yuna of the Tellus system. "The Vex will reach our inner worlds within weeks. If these humans exist and are as powerful as the records suggest, they might demand a price we cannot pay," countered Counselor Jinky. The debate raged for hours. Taeyong presented the findings while Admiral Hosiuk answered technical questions. "Our analysts give us 20 days before total defeat," Hosiuk finally said. "We can either die fighting or take this chance." In the end, desperation won. The council voted to send the message. Engineers worked through the night to build a transmitter powerful enough to reach the coordinates. The message was simple, a distress call, explaining their situation with the Vex and a plea for assistance. Taeyong stood on the transmission deck as the final preparations were made. "Do you really believe these humans will come?" he asked Hosiuk quietly. The old admiral shrugged. "Hope is all we have left." The transmission fired into space, a powerful burst of data aimed at a distant star. Then the waiting began. Life on the battleship continued. They fought small battles. They lost more ground. Taeyong slept little, haunted by the faces of those they couldn't save. 3 days after the transmission, Taeyong was reviewing evacuation plans for their homeworld when alarms sounded. "Commander to the bridge," the speakers announced. He rushed in to find the crew gathered around the communication station. "Sir," Lieutenant Jimin said, her eyes wide. "Our quantum receivers just activated. We have a response." Taeyong moved to her station. "From Earth." She nodded. "The signal matches the protocols in the ancient records." The message was displayed on the main screen. Just 4 words. We're on our way. The bridge erupted in chatter. Some laughed in relief. Others remained skeptical. How soon? Taeyong asked. Admiral Hosiak checked the transmission data. Based on the signal strength and origin point, they're already moving. Fast. For the first time in months, Taeyong felt something other than despair. A small spark of hope, dangerous but impossible to ignore. Alert all coalition forces, he ordered. Prepare for the arrival of possible allies. As word spread throughout their remaining territories, Taeyong looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an unknown force was coming. Whether they would bring salvation or further complications remained to be seen. But they had responded. They were coming. For the first time since the war began, the coalition had something to hold on to. It wasn't much, just 4 simple words. But sometimes, 4 words were enough to change everything. We're on our way. Professor Minho rubbed his tired eyes as he studied the ancient data files on human warfare. The Science Center, once bustling with hundreds of researchers, now housed only 12 desperate scientists trying to understand their potential saviors before they arrived. This can't be accurate, Minho muttered, pushing back from his desk. The holographic displays showed weapon systems that defied the laws of physics as the coalition understood them. No species could develop weapons of this magnitude without destroying themselves. His assistant, Yunha, looked up from her own work. Perhaps that's why they isolated themselves. The records mention a great conflict in their past. Minho nodded slowly. If even half of this is true, they could change everything. But why would such a powerful species respond to our call? The door slid open as Commander Taeyong entered the Science Center. The military leader looked grim as always, but there was something new in his eyes, a cautious hope. "Any insights, Professor?" he asked. Minho gestured to the displays. If these records are correct, human military technology is unlike anything we've seen. They appear to have mastered quantum manipulation, gravitational control, and energy conversion at levels we thought impossible. Can they defeat the Vex? Taeyong asked simply. Minho hesitated. In theory, yes. But these records are thousands of years old. We don't know what humans are like now. Across the star system, aboard the massive lead ship of the Vex Dominion's conquest fleet, alarms blared suddenly. The Vex, tall insectoid creatures with hardened exoskeletons and 4 arms, moved with practiced efficiency. Commander Krell, his carapace scarred from countless battles, studied the sensor readings with his 4 eyes. Unknown configuration, he reported to the ship's command center. Multiple vessels approaching from Sector 42. Not Coalition design. The High Commander's image appeared on the main screen. Like all Vex of the ruling caste, her exoskeleton gleamed with metallic implants signifying rank. Analysis, she demanded. 27 vessels, Krall replied. Power signatures unlike anything in our database. They're moving at speeds that should be impossible without massive energy wakes, yet our sensors detect minimal disturbance. The High Commander's mandibles clicked in agitation. Intercept and destroy. Nothing interrupts our conquest. Krall hesitated. High Commander, these ships err. Your duty is to obey, she cut him off. Intercept and destroy. The Coalition dies today. 2 days later, Coalition defense stations detected the approaching human fleet. News spread quickly through the remaining civilian populations. Some saw it as a miracle, others as false hope. Commander Taeyong and Admiral Hosiak waited in the command center of their last battle station. The tension was thick enough to cut. They're here, Lieutenant Jimin announced suddenly, entering visual range now. The main screen activated, and the room fell silent. Even with the ancient records as preparation, the sight of the human ships stunned everyone. They moved in perfect formation, but their designs defied conventional military thinking. Sleek, asymmetrical vessels with curves and angles that seemed almost artistic rather than functional. They gleamed with a material that wasn't quite metal, shifting slightly as if alive. "They're beautiful," someone whispered. Admiral Hosiuk nodded slowly. "And look at their positioning. That's not just for show. They're in a perfect defensive arrangement." The communications officer turned. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel." Taeyong straightened his uniform. On screen, the image shifted to show the interior of the human command center. Unlike the utilitarian designs of coalition ships, the human bridge featured warm lighting and curved consoles. At its center stood a human woman in a dark uniform with subtle gold markings. "I am Admiral Juwu of the Earth Defense Force," she said. Her voice was calm and authoritative. "We received your message. We're ready to help." Taeyong studied her carefully. She appeared physically similar to his own species, but with subtle differences. Her eyes held a depth of experience that made him wonder how old she truly was. "Admiral Juwu," he replied formally. "I am Commander Taeyong of the Galactic Coalition. Thank you for responding to our call." He hesitated, then added bluntly, "The Vex have destroyed worlds. They outnumber us 10-1. Admiral Juwu's expression didn't change, but a small smile appeared on her lips. "Numbers," she replied, "aren't everything." Before Taeyong could respond, emergency alarms blared. Lieutenant Jimin turned from her station. "Commander, Vex attack fleet incoming. Over 200 ships." The human admiral's smile grew slightly. "It seems we'll have a chance to demonstrate our capabilities sooner than expected. Commander Taeyong, please move your remaining vessels behind our defensive line." Hosiok stepped forward. "With respect, Admiral, we won't hide while you fight our battles." "Not hiding," Admiral Juwu replied. "Strategic positioning. We've studied the Vex tactical patterns during our approach. They've never encountered our technology, and the surprise will work in our favor. Once, we should use that advantage wisely." The tactical display showed the massive Vex fleet approaching rapidly. Their wedge-shaped formation had broken through coalition defenses countless times before. Taeyong made his decision. "Move our ships as the Admiral suggests," he ordered, "and prepare all weapons." As the coalition forces repositioned, the human vessels began to shift in ways that defied conventional space maneuvering. They moved as if gravity was merely a suggestion, spinning and sliding into a formation that seemed to make no tactical sense. "What are they doing?" Hosiok wondered aloud. Lieutenant Jimin looked up from her readings, her eyes wide. "Sir, they're not just ships. They're weapons themselves. The Vex fleet approach, their energy weapons charging." On the main screen, Admiral Juwu remained perfectly calm. "Let's show our new friends what humans can do," she said simply. The coalition war room buzzed with tension as human officers moved among the alien military leaders. After the stunning first contact, Admiral Juwu had sent her top strategists to plan the next phase. The room itself was a stark, utilitarian space carved deep into the last coalition stronghold moon. General Doyun, a veteran of 27 battles against the Vex, stood with his arms crossed as he watched the humans manipulate the holographic battle maps. His dark uniform bore the marks of countless honors. Though his species showed age differently than humans, his scaled skin had lightened almost to white. "This cannot work," Doyun finally said, pointing at the display. "This is suicide. We've tried direct engagement before. The Vex simply absorb the losses and keep coming." Human Captain Sunwoo turned from the display. Unlike the other humans who wore standard uniforms, Sunwoo's attire was simpler, a dark bodysuit with minimal insignia. The slight limp when she walked, and the cybernetic implant visible at her temple hinted at past battles. "Your previous strategies were predictable," she said, her voice calm but direct. "The Vex expect conventional warfare. They've adapted to your tactics because you fight as they do. Head-on, force against force." Sunwoo manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on Vex fleet formations from previous battles. "Look at their approach patterns. They never change. They rely on superior numbers and firepower, not innovation." Commander Taeyong, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "And what do humans bring that's different?" he asked. The initial relief of human arrival had given way to cautious skepticism after witnessing their unorthodox tactics in the first skirmish. "Asymmetric thinking," replied Sunwoo, meeting his gaze directly. "We've spent millennia fighting ourselves. We understand warfare like no other species." The room fell silent. Another human officer, Lieutenant Minji, continued where Sunwoo left off. "In our history," Minji explained, "humans often prevailed against superior forces through unexpected tactics. We don't just think about what weapons to use, but how to use them in ways the enemy cannot anticipate." Sunwoo nodded. "The Vex fight like a machine. Efficient but predictable. We fight like humans." She gestured to the display, which now showed the positions of the remaining coalition forces and the newly arrived human fleet. "We don't need to match their numbers. We need to disrupt their decision-making." "How?" asked Coalition Admiral Hoseok, who had been silently evaluating the humans since their arrival. Sunwoo smiled slightly. "Your forces have been fighting defensively, reacting to Vex movements. We're going to make them react to us instead." The plan she outlined was unlike anything the Coalition had considered. Rather than concentrating their forces, the human strategy involved dividing into smaller, highly mobile groups. Some would target Vex communication relays, others would strike at supply lines, while the main fleet would appear to retreat before executing a complex maneuver the humans called a hammer and anvil. "This violates every principle of space warfare," General Doyun protested. "Dividing our forces when we're already outnumbered is madness." "Perhaps," Captain Sunwoo conceded, "but madness is what the Vex don't expect. Their tactical computers analyze conventional approaches. They won't know how to respond to this." As the planning continued, a young coalition officer rushed into the room. "Commanders," she called out urgently. "Long-range sensors detect massive Vex fleet movements." The main display shifted to show hundreds of Vex warships advancing toward the coalition's central worlds. Their formation was even larger than intelligence had predicted, nearly 3 times the size of the coalition and human fleets combined. "They're accelerating their timeline," Commander Taeyong said grimly. "They must know about the human arrival." Captain Sunwoo studied the display, her expression calm despite the dire news. "This is actually favorable. They're committing everything, leaving their supply lines exposed." General Doyun stared at her in disbelief. "Favorable. They have enough firepower to reduce our remaining worlds to ash. Only if they get the chance to use it," Sunwoo replied. The war room doors opened again as Admiral Ju entered. The human commander's presence immediately changed the atmosphere. Even coalition officers who had been skeptical straightened respectfully. "I've reviewed the tactical data," Ju said without preamble. "The Vex are advancing faster than we anticipated. They're attempting to overwhelm us before we can fully integrate our forces." She turned to Taeyong. "It's time to implement our strategy. Are your forces ready?" Taeyong looked around the room at his fellow coalition officers. Decades of losing against the Vex had taught them caution, but caution hadn't saved their worlds. The human plan was risky, unconventional, and possibly brilliant. Or it could be their final mistake. "We have no choice," he nodded grimly. Admiral Ju nodded once. "Captain Sunwoo, begin deployment. I want all ships in position within 4 hours." As officers hurried to their stations, Taeyong found himself alone with Admiral Ju. "The Vex have never lost a major engagement," he said quietly. "My people have forgotten what hope feels like." Admiral Ju's expression softened slightly. "On Earth, we have a saying. The most dangerous opponent is the one with nothing left to lose. Your people have fought bravely against impossible odds. Now let us show you what humans do best." "And what is that?" Taeyong asked. "Changing the rules when the game is rigged against us," she replied with a hint of a smile. As they walked together toward the command center, alert sirens began to wail throughout the base. The final battle for the coalition's survival had begun. The massive view screen in the Coalition Command Center displayed the approaching Vex armée. Thousands of enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive metallic sheen that had become synonymous with destruction across the galaxy. Commander Taeyong stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his face betraying none of the fear that churned in his stomach. Beside him, Admiral Juwu appeared completely calm, almost relaxed. "Your ships are taking position now," reported Lieutenant Joy. From the tactical station, the young officer's fingers moved rapidly over her console as she tracked the human fleet's movements. "They're forming a crescent defense pattern." But she hesitated. "What is it, Lieutenant?" Taeyong asked. "They're exposing their flanks," Jai said, confusion evident in her voice. "The formation has obvious weak points. The Vex will see this as weakness." Admiral Juwu smiled slightly. "That's the intention." Taeyong glanced at the human admiral. After their earlier strategic discussions, he understood the theory behind this unorthodox approach, but seeing it implemented was another matter entirely. The human ships, despite their advanced technology, seemed deliberately vulnerable. "Coalition vessels are in reserve position as ordered," Jihai continued. "All weapons systems primed and ready." The command center fell silent as they watched the Vex fleet approach. Their arrowhead formations had broken through countless defenses before. Each ship carried enough firepower to devastate a small moon. "The Vex fleet is increasing speed," Jai reported, tension evident in her voice. "They're committing fully to the engagement." On the Vex command ship, Supreme Commander Kraz watched with satisfaction as the enemy formation appeared on their tactical displays. The strange new ships that had allied with the coalition were powerful, but their tactical deployment showed obvious weaknesses. "They make this too easy," Kraz commented, his 4 arms working different control surfaces simultaneously. "Their flanks are exposed. Their formation is defensive rather than aggressive." His second-in-command, War Director Mez, chittered in agreement. "The new ships must not be as powerful as intelligence suggested. Their positioning is flawed." Kraz's mandibles clicked in amusement. "All battle groups, advance at full speed. Crush them while they cower." Back on the Coalition Command Center, Admiral Juwu checked her timepiece. 3 minutes until optimal position," she said quietly. Lieutenant Jihai's console beeped urgently. "The Vex have increased speed. All ships moving to attack formation." Taeyong felt sweat bead on his forehead. From his perspective, the human ships looked hopelessly outmatched. The Vex fleet vastly outnumbered them, and now they were charging directly into the weakest parts of the human formation. "Vex ships entering range in 30 seconds, Jai reported. Admiral Juwu stepped forward. "Open channel to all human vessels." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Around them, the massive view screen showed the Vex fleet approaching the exact coordinates the humans had calculated. Their massive ships, shaped like angular blades, sliced through space toward the seemingly vulnerable human formation. 20 seconds to contact, Jai counted down. Vex weapons systems powering up. Admiral Juwu stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the display. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and clear. "Execute." In that moment, the battlefield transformed. The human ships, which had appeared to be in a static defensive posture, suddenly shifted. Their movement wasn't like normal space maneuvering. They seemed to flicker, as if jumping between positions. "What's happening?" Taeyong asked, staring at the display in confusion. Before anyone could answer, brilliant beams of energy erupted from the human vessels. Unlike conventional weapons fire, these beams seemed to distort the space around them, creating rippling effects that reminded Taeyong of heat waves above desert sand. "Time-phased weapons fire," explained a human officer nearby. "The energy arrives at the target before the light of the beam itself." On the display, Vex ships began to explode as the energy struck them before their shields could adapt. There was no time between the human weapons firing and the impact. They happened simultaneously. Lieutenant Jihai's eyes widened as her instruments registered new phenomena. Energy readings off the scale. The human ships are generating quantum disruption fields. Expanding waves of blue-white energy spread from the human vessels, washing over entire sections of the Vex fleet. Ships caught in these fields didn't explode. They simply powered down, their lights flickering and dying as their advanced systems failed completely. Coalition forces, move in now, Admiral Ju ordered. Taeyong nodded to his officers. All ships, commence attack pattern Delta. Target the disabled vessels first. The coalition ships, which had been waiting in reserve, now surged forward. Following the human battle plan, they executed precision strikes against the suddenly vulnerable Vex vessels. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were now helpless, drifting targets. On the Vex command ship, chaos reigned. Warning alarms blared as systems failed across the fleet. "How are they targeting our command frequencies?" demanded Supreme Commander Kraz, his exoskeleton clicking in agitation as his ship shuddered under repeated impacts. "Our encryption is being bypassed." "Unknown technology." War Director Mez responded, frantically trying to restore communications with their battle groups. "We've lost contact with the entire left flank. Right flank reporting massive systems failures." Kraz stared in disbelief at the tactical display, watching as his mighty armada crumbled before this impossible attack. "Order all functioning ships to regroup and—" His command was cut short as the lights on the bridge flickered and died, emergency systems activating with a dull red glow. "Main power offline," reported a panicked technician. "Weapons systems disabled. Engines non-responsive." Within minutes, not hours or days, the tide had turned completely. The Vex fleet, which had begun the battle with overwhelming superiority in numbers and firepower, was now in complete disarray. Nearly half their ships drifted powerless, while others burned from precision strikes or attempted desperate, uncoordinated retreats. In the Coalition Command Center, stunned silence gave way to cautious cheers as the situation became clear. "I don't believe it," Taeyong whispered, watching as the once mighty Vex armada disintegrated before them. Admiral Ju turned to him, her expression serious despite their success. "This is just the beginning. Now comes the hard part." "Hard part?" Taeyong asked in confusion. "We're winning." "Winning a battle is easy," Ju replied. "Winning the peace that follows is much harder." The battle ended in exactly 17 minutes. The vast space where thousands of Vex ships had dominated now showed a different scene. Some enemy vessels drifted without power, their lights dark and systems dead. Others had been destroyed completely, fragments scattered across the emptiness. The remaining Vex ships fled in panic, their once perfect formations broken. In the Coalition Command Center, officers stared at their displays in stunned silence. For many, victory was a foreign concept after years of constant defeat. Enemy forces retreating beyond sensor range. Lieutenant Jihai reported, her voice shaking slightly. No sign of reinforcements. Commander Taeyong turned to Admiral Ju. "Is it really over?" The human admiral nodded. "The main fleet is broken. Their command structure is in chaos. They'll regroup eventually, but not for some time. We've given the Coalition breathing room." Word spread quickly across the 7 remaining Coalition worlds, streets filled with people looking up at the skies. For the first time in years, they weren't watching for evacuation ships or enemy bombardments. Instead, they celebrated. Families who had packed their few belongings now unpacked. Children who had never known peace danced in open areas. On the Coalition homeworld, emergency shelters emptied as people returned to their homes. Supply ships that had prepared for a final evacuation now distributed food and medicine. The shadow that had hung over these worlds for so long had lifted. But not everyone celebrated without reservation. 3 days after the battle, the Coalition Council gathered for an emergency session. The Grand Chamber, once host to representatives from 30 star systems, now held only 7. Admiral Ju and her senior officers attended as honored guests. Security Director Yuna, her dark uniform pristine as always, stood to address the council. Unlike many, she showed no joy in her expression. "We all owe the humans our gratitude," she began, her voice clear and firm. "Without their intervention, our civilization would have ended this week, but we must consider the implications of their power." She gestured toward the human delegation. "If they can defeat the Vex so easily, what happens if we ever disagree with Earth? We may have traded one potential conqueror for another." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The concern was not unexpected. Any species capable of such military dominance naturally inspired fear alongside gratitude. Admiral Juwu listened calmly. When invited to respond, she walked to the center of the chamber, her movements deliberate and unhurried. "I understand your concerns," she said. "In your position, I would share them. But Earth's history has taught us harsh lessons about power and its misuse." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. "We came not to conquer, but to help. Earth knows the cost of war better than most. We offer technology, protection, and partnership, not dominion." The weeks that followed brought rapid change. Human engineers helped restore damaged coalition infrastructure. Medical teams treated those injured in the final battles. Defense specialists began training coalition forces in new tactics and technologies. Not all interactions were smooth. Cultural misunderstandings occurred daily. Some coalition citizens remained wary of the humans, watching from a distance as they worked. Others embraced the newcomers, eager to learn from a species with such advanced knowledge. The first joint military patrols launched 1 month after the battle. Coalition ships flew alongside human vessels, monitoring the borders of their reclaimed territory. Star systems once terrorized by Vex fleets now saw these mixed patrols passing regularly, a visible symbol of the new alliance. 6 months later, Commander Taeyong stood on the balcony of his family home on the coalition homeworld. For the first time in years, he watched the sun setting over the western mountains without thinking about defense strategies or evacuation plans. Admiral Juwu joined him, now dressed in simpler clothing than her military uniform. Together, they watched the sky turn from blue to deep orange. "The rebuilding is going well," Taeyong said, breaking the comfortable silence. 3 of our lost worlds have been reclaimed already." Juwu nodded. "The Vex won't return to this sector anytime soon. Our intelligence suggests they're consolidating their remaining forces far from coalition space." Taeyong turned to face her. "Your people saved us, but everyone fears what they don't understand. How do we move forward from here?" The human admiral smiled gently. "One day at a time, Commander. Humanity learned the hard way that winning a war is easy compared to building a lasting peace. That's the real challenge we face together." She pointed to a group of children playing in a nearby park. Coalition children alongside the few human families that had settled here. They played together without the hesitation or suspicion shown by many adults. "They'll build the future better than we can imagine," she said. In the months and years that followed, the partnership deepened. Human technology helped the coalition recover and expand. Coalition cultural knowledge enriched the human understanding of the galaxy. Together, they created something neither could have built alone. Throughout the galaxy, a new era had begun. Humanity was feared for their martial prowess, their ships recognized and respected in regions far beyond coalition space. But they became known for something else as well, something the Vex could never comprehend: their capacity for mercy. When 3 Vex worlds faced ecological collapse after their military defeat, it was human ships that arrived with supplies and expertise. When former enemies sought peace, it was at tables where humans and coalition representatives sat side by side. The galaxy learned what the coalition had discovered in those 17 minutes of battle. Humans were dangerous enemies but invaluable friends. The end.